Welcome into Bears Nation podcast. It is Thursday, December 29th, a little bit different. Yesterday, myself and Kevin both had certain whatever stuff going on. So we pushed it today, but we are here. I know everyone's super locked into this game that we're going to talk about anyway with the Bears and the Bills. I know everyone's actually probably more so than recent weeks, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But we are here, myself, Jake Hassan, as always, with Kevin Lapka. I am on Twitter at, what is my Twitter handle?
Jake _ Hassan 2 or Jake under HAS 2, something like
Jake
that.
Jake _ HAS 2. Kevin is at KevCharles112. That was weird. I blanked on my own Twitter handle. That's kind of weird and embarrassing. But regardless, we are here, Bears Nation podcast. Another week, another episode, another preview for everyone involved. We appreciate everyone coming through and listening and watching live as well. A lot to get into today, more than usual on a regular preview. The Bears seem to be close to announcing a new president/CEO to take over Ted Phillips' role. We have, of course, the upcoming Bills and Bears game. Nope, that happened already. Thanks for correcting me the first time, Kevin. We have the upcoming.
Did you say it the first time? I didn't even notice.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. That's what happens when you're not here for a week. We have the upcoming Lions and Bears game to talk about. The Detroit Lions hosting the Bears as 6-point favorites as they fight for their playoff lives, as the Bears fight for draft position. And we will talk about that game. And at the end, me and myself. Wow, I'm on a heater today. Doing really good. Doing really well. Myself and Kevin both have. I texted Kevin this morning. I have a trade scenario that I want to throw out there. Kevin responded, I also have one. So we'll be interested to get into that. I have a feeling it's going to be similar, but it might not be. I don't know. It could be interesting. So we'll talk about that later in the show as well. But this is Bears Nation podcast. It is Thursday. We have a preview episode. I think I worked it all out of my system now. Kevin, how are we doing?
Good. You know, it's been a week for you. Can't blame yourself. We're all on holiday break. You know, we're not in this period between Christmas and New Year's is like the most dead. It's your time to be kind of off your game. You know what I mean? If there were ever a time where you could kind of just be, off a little bit, it's this time period. And then, January 1st hits and you're back at it. We'll break this down, man. I'm doing well. Be honest, I don't have a ton to say about this game. We'll do our typical preview, but it's not going to be as extensive for me as other ones. I think a lot of people as well in the chat and are listening in podcast form are looking forward more to the talk that we're going to have about the trade scenarios and, of course, the possible draft positioning updates. We didn't do the recap episode after Bears Bills just because it was a holiday, with Christmas, and the Texans won. So obviously everyone knows now Bears are at 2, but could get up to number 1 if we lose out and the Texans just win one more game virtue of their tie. So a lot to unpack as far as what's going to happen beyond 2022, but we'll still break this down. There's still people who are going to throw money on this game. So we'll tell you where to put your money. We know there's a lot of things on the line, but yeah, man, let's get after it.
Yeah. So, let's start we'll start with what's most boring and boring, and it's not going to take as much time. The Bears appear now to be close to hiring a new president, CEO. Reports coming out today that Kevin Warren, who is currently the president of the Big Ten, is the leading candidate for this. I know most people are probably like, okay, great, big whoop. But a lot of people also are like, okay, this gets Ted Phillips officially out the door, the guy who has drawn the ire and drawn really the criticism of most Bears fans, myself and Kevin included, for most of our lifetime. Since I was old enough to really be a cognizant sports fan and kind of understand how a sports team runs and the structure, everyone and their mother and their father and their sister and their brother bitches about Ted Phillips, and ourselves included, over the last couple of years on this show. So the end of the Ted Phillips era is coming to an end. It seems like it is imminent, and it'll be announced in the next couple of days, which kind of makes sense. Something that, gets the Bears in the news cycle at the end of the lost season. After, once the playoffs start, you're not going to be really talked about until draft season and until draft time, when you're at the top of the draft or near the top of the draft. So, Kevin, we were texting a little bit about this earlier. I don't really have a lot on this. I think it's probably mostly a net positive from an optics standpoint. Most Bears fans are going to be happy about this, but it also further puts the wall, the divide, the line in the sand between what will be the business side and what will be the football side. Kevin Warren, in his time as the Big Ten's president, has done a great job on the business side. He's secured TV deals. He's guided this merger with the Pac-12 with USC and UCLA soon to join the Big Ten next season. And he's accrued to the Big Ten a lot of money over his time as the head of the Big Ten Conference. So I think this is a good move for the Bears, especially with the whole stadium thing coming up, with a huge business decision like that coming up. But I think it's more of a divide. It further shows that the Bears are committed to saying, okay, we have two separate entities here. We have one guy for the business side specifically, and a set of guys for the football side. And sure, they'll mingle sometimes, but for the most part, there is a line in the sand. You don't cross onto my side. I don't cross onto your side. Everybody has their place, and we don't have one guy doing back and forth and going back and forth and making decisions for both sides. One guy for one side, one guy for the other side. I think it's a net positive.
Yeah, I'm with you. You know, it's hard to go too deep into Kevin Warren because we don't know if that's exactly going to be the guy, right?
Isn't official yet.
To be, and then the Big Ten put out a statement of, well, he's committed to the Big Ten, but of course you're going to put out a statement just because, you know, you have to, but there's a very good chance he still could become the president and CEO of Chicago Bears. And Shane M puts in the chat, that's what I was going to hit on. You know, he helped build US Bank Stadium with the Vikings, right? And that's what presumably people believe is the main reason he would be brought in, is to obviously help with Arlington Park, because they did such a great job with US Bank Stadium in Minnesota. You know, everything around
hosted a Super Bowl, right?
Have they hosted one already?
They hosted a Super Bowl a couple years ago.
Yeah, I forget which game that was that they hosted. I don't know if it was the Eagles year. I don't know if it was Eagles Patriots when Nick Foles made the magic. I can't remember. But obviously, you know, they did such a good job at that stadium.
Yep. It was the Eagles Super Bowl. Yep.
Yeah. And you know, obviously they're going to bring him in because of that. But you know, there's a lot of people who say, well, why does it doesn't matter, President CEO? Well, given what everyone knows and thought of Ted Phillips for the past, you know, X years, like it matters if he is going to have a say in football related things. But we hope here's what I'm unsure, right? Is when it came to Ted Phillips, I think it got to a point for the McCaskies where the Bears weren't winning. So for Ted Phillips, it was like, okay, we're just going to remove Ted from this, right? Like Ted is going to not be involved in football situations. I don't know if that means a future president and CEO will not be involved in football relations. You know, they didn't make it clear that, hey, whoever flexes into this role after Ted Phillips will also not be affiliated and will be solely focused on business, right? It seemed more of, hey, Ted has not done a good job in that role, however it pertains to his insider analysis on what goes on in the field. He's going to solely focus on Arlington Park. I would imagine that that's going to be the role of whoever the next president/CEO will be. But you know, Cody Wessler and I were talking about this in the office today. Like, what if you do bring in a guy, like maybe it's not Kevin Warren, who does have a little bit of football background, but wasn't a former player, you know, not any of those things. What if you end up bringing in a guy who was a former player, who was a former GM, who was a former scout, who former coach, who's been around the game, right? You know, people floated Peyton Manning around, you know, for years. Like, I'm not saying they're going to bring him in, but if you do bring in a guy like that, like, it's hard to believe that line that you just described, where, hey, it's clearly divided between business and football, it might start to get blurred if you do bring in a guy who has more experience in football. And maybe that's not a bad thing, right? If it is a guy that likes a Peyton Manning, maybe that's a good thing. But if it's kind of a name who's been tossed around, who doesn't have a ton of experience, and they're getting involved, like, you don't want that again. So it'll be interesting to see where they go with this. It just really depends on who it is. But assuming that it is Kevin Warren in that situation, I am in full agreement with you that I would imagine it's a clear divide. He's just going to be here for Arlington Park, and then he'll go on to his future endeavors. Because at this point, it's all but a done deal that they're moving to Arlington Heights. So that would be it.
Yeah, and that's really all I have on that, because, I mean, it's all we know.
What else is there to say?
You're right, exactly. And just to wrap up that point of, you know, what if that line starts to become blurred and what exactly is the role? I imagine that'll be announced with the opening press conference of whoever it is, whether that be a Kevin Warren, whether that be someone else. I imagine that role will then be, you know, the specifics will be disclosed then at like that opening press conference, because we know there will be one. and the introductory press conference. I'm sure that role will be specified then and what exactly the responsibilities are. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Whatever it is, what it is, it's whatever. If it is Kevin Warren, it's mostly for the stadium, and I think it's mostly shows that there's a clear line in the sand there, as we mentioned. All right, let's talk about draft position. Let's talk about the 2023 Bears. I mean, the Texans, I don't know what's going on. The Texans could really be on a 3-game win streak right now, and the Bears could already have had the number 1 pick locked up. The Texans, to their credit, have been playing really well the last 3 weeks, including their win last week over Detroit. They almost beat Texas. They hung with them for most of the game. They took Kansas City to overtime. Like, I mean, the Texans could have 4 wins right now, which would have been insane. But, you're right there now. If the Texans win one more game and you lose out like we think that you're going to, you get the number 1 pick because the Texans have that tie from earlier in the year. And I'm going to tell you right now, Kevin, the Texans play the Colts in Indianapolis to close the season. In a lost season for Indianapolis, with Jeff Saturday as the coach, with Nick Foles probably as the starting quarterback, and Lovie Smith is we saw this with the Bears, we saw this at Illinois, and we've seen it with the Texans. He's going to have the guys ready to play. He's going to play to win every time. He's not going to go out there and be like, all right, last game of the season, let's pack it up. That's not who he is. Now the Colts, that phone in Jeff Saturday's office might be ringing. Hello, hey, Jeff, it's Jim upstairs. We've met a couple times. We need to lose this game to lock up the 4th or 5th pick or whatever it may be at this point. And it's clear that the Texans are a poorly run organization and that they will win a football game. From top to bottom, the Texans are a poorly run organization. That has been true for years. They might win that game in Indianapolis. And then you might be looking at Chicago Bears 2023 number 1 overall pick, which would be crazy. And I'm going to say something a little insane. I actually think it would be to the Bears' detriment to get the number 1 pick instead of the number 2 pick. And I will tell you why right now. Because if the Texans pick number 1 overall, they're taking Bryce Young. Like that's the thing. That's it. We know that. We've been known that. If the Bears pick number 1 overall, everyone knows they're not taking a quarterback. Everyone knows then that the draft doesn't really start till 2. It pushes everything back. Now, if the Bears are at 2 and Bryce Young's already off the board, that leaves 2 quarterbacks, which we discussed in a previous episode. That leaves 2 quarterbacks worth taking in the top 10. Depending on who you listen to and what order, it doesn't matter. But that leaves you then in a position for teams like the Colts, teams like the Seahawks, teams like the Lions even, teams like the Saints to go, oh shit, there's only 2 guys left here. And we don't want to be the one left behind if we like one guy way more than the other, or we don't want to end up without one of these guys. Whereas if you're at number 1, teams don't have to worry about it. Teams know you're not taking a quarterback. Now, that might mean one of these teams is like, well, we really, really like Bryce Young. And we know the Texans are for sure going to take him at 2. And we really, really love him more than we love Stroud. We really love him more than we love Levis. So they might be, then you're in the same position. You command a king's ransom. But I'm just saying there's an argument, and this might just be me trying to create content out of nothing, but it's something that I feel like is a fair argument where, and if you're at number 2, you might get a desperate team that's willing to throw even more at you for Stroud or Levis than at number 1 for Young. Maybe.
I see what you mean. But at the same time, the luxury of getting 1 is, well, now you get a team that evaluates Bryce Young in a totally different tier as CJ Stroud and Will Levis and are willing to pay you more to jump Houston to get Bryce Young. And now, personally, I don't even think the gap is that significant as in previous drafts. Like if you think about previous drafts where, say Trevor Lawrence, right, in 2021, I think the gap between Fields and Lawrence at the time was way closer than people made it out to be, obviously, considering how far Fields fell. But everyone knew that that Lawrence was pretty much the consensus number 1, right? He was sort of in a league of his own among most NFL scouts.
I remember when the Jets won that game,
correct,
in that season, and everyone clowned them. Like, you just played yourself out of Trevor Lawrence, you doofuses.
Right. See, now I don't think that you're going to get a situation. I mean, in hindsight, it may be true, but I don't think right now you're going to get a situation where later on people are going to be saying, if the Texans do win a game, oh my God, you potentially played your way out of Bryce Young, right? Like it doesn't feel the same for me.
Sure.
That gap isn't big enough. So for that reason, yeah, you might be right because maybe no team is really willing to say, hey, I'm going to trade you an unprecedented amount of draft picks for the number one overall pick because this is extremely rare territory. I mean, how often do you see a team get the number one overall draft pick that already has their starting star quarterback lockdown? Like this is a rarity. Even most teams that don't take a quarterback at number one overall, they end up taking an edge rusher or whatever, typically don't have a star quarterback. They have a quarterback they think can maybe win them a couple games and they're in, year 2 of a rebuild out of year 3. They just weren't willing to take a quarterback. It's extremely rare for a team to be at number one to not take a quarterback and not take a guy, the caliber of any of these guys. So I think you could get an unprecedented haul for number one overall. But again, the question becomes, who is willing to give you that haul? Because if you are asking for that, and it is a standard now that, hey, you should be getting a record-breaking deal here for number one overall, I don't think there's a team out there, whether it's, Indianapolis or a team behind the Texans who needs a quarterback, the Raiders, who are willing to give you that much to get Bryce Young. Again, if it was a consensus number one guy who's been the number one guy for a year, there's no switching, there's no changing. This is the guy he's going to for sure be a lock to be a generational superstar. If that were the case, then yeah. So as I kind of talk myself through this, I might be kind of on your side because once Bryce Young goes, then it's like, okay, now there's a sense of urgency for those teams behind you. And with the news about Derek Carr, it becomes more significant because that is immediately a team that needs to move up for a quarterback, and they're further down the draft order. So they're going to have to give you a little bit more.
We're all in agreement, right? Derek Carr is done in Vegas.
He's done in Vegas. Yeah, that's done. No question.
It's over.
It's over. And it segues into something else that I want to talk about later. But look, you can't go wrong with either, but I will agree with you in the general sense that people shouldn't be making as big of a deal about getting number one as they are, as it pertains to what the Bears can do. Because if you're going into that thinking, oh, you're going to just draft a guy, if you're at 1 or 2, you're going to you take your pick, Will Anderson or Jalen Carter. You're going to get either of them regardless, whether you're at 1 or 2. So the people who want to get to 1 is for the sole reason of being able to trade back. And at that point, I don't know. CNI Plus, shout out to you in the chat. Appreciate you hopping in here. But that's where I'm kind of at with that one right now. So,
yeah. So in a situation like that, you talk about there's one team that kind of sticks out, and it'll be Seattle because Seattle gets Denver's pick. And right now, Denver's slated to have number 3 overall. And Seattle themselves are on a 3-game losing streak. They could jump Bryce Young. They could get into the top 10 on their own, but right now they're at 12. If that phone rings and Seattle offers you those 2 first-round picks, and let's say you're at number 1, and Seattle loves Bryce Young, and they want to get ahead of Houston. They said, you know what, we really love Bryce Young more than we love Stroud. If that phone rings and you're Ryan Poles, and it's the Seattle Seahawks. Hey, right. Ryan, we'll give you the 3rd overall pick, and let's just say they stay where they are now, and the 12th overall pick, and we'll give you a 3rd rounder this year and a 2nd rounder next year. Do you do it?
So you get 3, 12, a 3rd rounder next year and a 2nd rounder next year?
A 2nd rounder this year. No.
2nd rounder this year.
A 3rd rounder this year, a 2nd rounder next year.
Yeah, I think you do it. I mean, I think you have to do that. That ensures that you get Jalen Carter or Will Anderson at 3, because if the Seattle were moving up, they would be doing it to get Bryce Young, and Houston would subsequently take CJ Stroud or Will Levis, you imagine. For some reason, I have a strong feeling the stock for Will Levis is going to go up. It is very reminiscent of Zach Wilson in 2021. Very reminiscent. You're seeing all the videos of him throwing not in games, pro day throws, all these things like that, right? And then you can get 10, and then you could get probably a wide receiver if you're taking. I'm not sure a wide receiver will go before pick 10. I am not sure that the gap between any of those wide receivers is significant enough for a team to be willing to pull the trigger before pick 10. So you do that, you're set, man. So yes, you have to take that. You absolutely have to take that. But it'll be interesting to see if that plays out. What's up, Charlotte J, part of the 670 mob up here, Bears Nation podcast. But I can we just get into the trade? I think we have to get into the trade conversation real quick as we're doing this, because mine is directly correlated to this.
This is a good segue, and also just real quick, because, and this is the basis of this whole argument. The Trey Lance trade for the 49ers to move up to number 3 overall and select Trey Lance in that draft. The price tag for that was first round pick in 2022 and 2023, and a third rounder in the same draft in 2022. So that was 2 picks in that draft and a future first rounder. So really, if you're the Seahawks and you're the Bears, that evaluation isn't too far off and that was for number 3. This is for number 1 overall, the first shot. So really, 3 and 12 and a second rounder next year and a third rounder this year. That's not crazy. Like, it would set a new standard going forward in the NFL as far as trading for draft picks in the future. But I don't know,
because it's this peculiar situation because you're trading for a second pick in the same draft, right? Like, typically it's, hey, we'll get number 3, and then, hey, you take our first rounder in 2024. But
right, sure, and that changes things. Obviously that might bring the price down. Maybe then it's just the 2 first-round picks this year and a third rounder next year. Maybe, obviously we're not NFL GMs. Right. We don't know how this will work. We're just trying to have fun with it here. So that was my first one. So we're both, the next trade that we're both going to talk about is with the Raiders, right? I think is where we're going with this.
Was this the one you texted me this morning about?
Yes.
All right.
Okay. So we're both trying to think of scenarios in which the Bears get a first round pick this year and Davante Adams, right? That's where we're at.
Yeah, that's where we're at. I had the same exact thing.
I was so excited because it hit my brain. I was like, "Oh, Kevin's gonna love this," which is apparently true because he came up with it by himself without us talking about it anyway. So, I mean, I guess that's how we're actually friends in real life too, because that's just how it is. So, all right. So I'll go first, and you tell me if you think I'm crazy, and then you hit me with what you were thinking. So Raiders, as we said, they are just in a free fall. They are basically out of the playoffs now. They're currently slated for the 9th overall pick. They are tied with Carolina at 6-9 overall. Nice. So Carolina's fighting for a division too. They might get another win, and Vegas might lose out. So let's see. Vegas' schedule going forward is they have the Niners this week. That's a loss. And the Chiefs then in the final week. So the Raiders are going to finish 6-11. So the Raiders are going to finish 6-11, and Carolina has Tampa Bay, and they have someone else after. They have one more, and then the Saints. So Panthers could get one more. So they probably split, and the Raiders probably lose out. So Vegas is probably going to be at 8. So let's do this both ways. So let's say the Bears are at 1. Vegas calls. They say, you have a shit ton of cap room. You're looking to get out of number 1 because you don't need a quarterback. We're trying to hit a huge reset and just start from scratch. We're done with Derek Carr. Jarrett Stidham obviously is not going to be anything. We really want number 1. We'll give you Davante Adams and the 8th overall pick. And I mean, is that it? I was along the lines that you get a pick next year as well too. I mean, I was thinking 3rd rounder, but I could be convinced that it would be a 2nd rounder in 2024.
Yes.
Your thoughts?
That's exactly what I wrote down. 100% exactly what I wrote down. Now, again, I didn't know at the time when I wrote this down that they had the Chiefs and you said the Niners it was, right? Their final 2 games. So
Niners this week.
It all but guarantees that they're going to be 6-11, right? It all but guarantees that. So here's what we talked about, well, is the difference between 1 and 2 that significant? Well, that's where it is, because if you talk about collecting more assets, you think Las Vegas is going into it saying, they might have their guy right now on their board. And if their guy is Bryce Young, then and the Bears don't get one, and
or if it's Stroud.
Well, I don't think it's going. Look,
I don't think it is, but I mean, it could be either.
Sure, if it is, but I'm saying, like, in most scenarios, Young is the consensus number 1. So if that is the case, then you might see them say, hey, okay, the Texans took, Bryce Young. We're not willing to pay that much to move up to 2, but we will pay that much and give away Davante Adams to move up to 1. And the thing is, I think people do understand this. Davante Adams wants out. Like, he hasn't officially said it. And Connor, who's in the chat now, my guy we're talking about today in the Twitch chat, like, He went to Las Vegas solely for Derek Carr, former college teammates, right?
Yep.
You know, he wanted
his best friend.
Didn't have a great relationship with Aaron Rodgers. Just wanted to have a
had
fun time.
Had a near-death experience together.
Yeah, exactly. Like, these guys are tight. He wanted to go play with his brother. He's getting older. Derek Carr is getting older. They wanted to do it. And now that is over and Derek Carr is no longer going to be the quarterback, there is no way. There is absolutely no way that Davante Adams wants to be in Vegas. And he is going to demand a trade. And sure, if Vegas can sit back and say, hey, it would be great to give our young quarterback, Davante Adams and give him a resource, but it doesn't make any sense for the path that they're going at. Davante Adams is 30 years old, right? And if you're the Las Vegas Raiders, you get a young quarterback, you're probably 2 to 3 years before even able to be in contention. And at that point, you're wasting 2 to 3 years of Davante Adams. So for both sides, it doesn't make sense. Like, why would you want to keep him on the books? Why would you keep Davante Adams on the books for 2 years when you're not going to be in contention? It makes sense for both sides to trade him. And I think he's going to demand a trade. And if I'm being honest, to Chicago is one of the most logical destinations. You start next, you're trading him to a team that's right at the beginning of a Super Bowl window or a playoff window, whatever you want to call it. Cody Westland was yelling at me about that. Super Bowl window, playoff window, I don't care, right? You can trade.
I'm
trade
firmly
draft.
Playoff window.
Okay, sure. You've been saying it for 5 weeks, but now you want to switch up and make me look bad? Sure.
No. I won't say Super Bowl window for sure. I will say, Davante Adams would make it a Super Bowl window, but playoff window optimistically next year. Yes.
Correct. So look, it makes too much sense. If he still hates Green Bay, this is a chance to stick it to him by playing for their rival. I don't know if he wants to go back to cold weather. Who knows if those things are in play. I'd have to take a look at his contract.
You might have an indoor stadium.
You might, well, not by that point. I mean, it's going to be 2026 before that happens, and he, by that point, he would be, 34. T3P podcast. I forgot about this. Right in the chat. Don't forget the Getsy to Adams connection. Another reason, right? And Adams has been thriving in Vegas. It's not like Getsy was the key to his career. You know what I mean? But the thing
he's only leading the league in receiving touchdowns and almost yards. So yeah, he's doing all right.
He's doing just fine without Luke Getsy.
He's doing okay.
And so so as we do this, let me pitch you this, right? So he isn't the only one. Okay, last year, AJ Brown traded, Tyreek Hill traded, Davante Adams traded, Amari Cooper traded, Marquise Brown traded. There were 5 guys traded last year, 5 significant names. To people who think that this is a crazy concept,
did you just include Amari Cooper in that conversation?
Yeah, you got to include Amari Cooper.
Amari Cooper's cooked.
Oh, he is not cooked. He's been doing just fine this year. He's been doing just fine. And for the value that they got him at, 5th rounder or 2 fifths,
fine.
You got to include him. But I'll throw some names out to you, okay? And you're going to tell me if these names for you are viable as well for players that the Bears could possibly trade for. If in the event it's not Davante Adams, or in the event that Ryan Poles isn't willing to trade that many assets just for a guy who's 30 years old, right? He's very set on getting young players into this building, building it through the younger guys, right? Building through the draft, all these sort of things, sure. But at some point, you might have to do it. So here's 3 other names, okay? T. Higgins, right? We've been talking about that for weeks. Would you be interested in T. Higgins for the right price?
I would 100% be interested in T. Higgins. 1000%.
Okay, so T. Higgins, a name that we will keep our eye on.
Now, to be clear though, I would not give up the 2nd overall pick for T. Higgins.
Correct. And that's where things get interesting, is what would you trade for T. Higgins? Are the Bengals going to ask for a 1st rounder? Because quite frankly, Marquise Hollywood Brown was traded for a 1st rounder. So if you're taking previous acquisitions and using that value, then the Bengals might sit there and say, hey, T. Higgins, 3,000 career receiving yards, 1,000 yards this year already, 7 touchdowns. Hell yeah, we want a 1st round pick. The Bears can't get that.
And he's missed a ton of games too. He's missed a few games.
He's missed a few games. Bears don't need Adams. They got Velus Jones Jr. What are we even talking about here?
Vomit. Literally.
Okay, so T. Higgins we're in on. DeAndre Hopkins. What's your interest level in 30-year-old DeAndre Hopkins? 31.
Probably less than both Higgins and Adams.
Sure.
Now, I think that the most out of those 3 guys, Hopkins' price would be the lowest. Hopkins might not even cost you a 1st round pick.
He won't. 100% won't, in my opinion.
Now in that case, I'd be interested. Like if you told me DeAndre Hopkins took a second rounder this year, like your other second rounder this year, and then you're out of the second round, which kind of sucked, but in or like a third rounder and a real low pick next year, I would probably do that.
I don't even know if he goes for that much. I mean, look,
I think reputation alone would at least get him a third round.
And the way he's been playing this year, he's been balling this year. At least when Kyler was in there and Colt McCoy, not struggling with Trace McSorley, but it's Trace McSorley. Okay, so DeAndre, it's a name to keep an eye on, right?
I'm intrigued.
I'm intrigued. It's not a team that's in a rebuild. They have a quarterback, but they traded for Marquise Hollywood-Brown. They have Rondale Moore. They have Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson might be done with them this year. I don't know what his contract looks like, right? They might say, hey, we don't need him. We are willing to give him away and get more, right? Like that's a possibility. Is it the most realistic of the 3 or 4 that I'm about to list here? No. Last one, a team that I believe is going to get rid of their quarterback at the end of the year, a guy who is only 29. I could have sworn this guy was older. Mike Evans. He's only 29, and I think that's a guy out of the 4 guys: Davante Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, Mike Evans, T. Higgins. You could probably get the best value for him as far as your return or what you'd be giving away. I don't think you'd have to give away a second for him. Teams might be looking at him like, hey, he's washed. He had a down year. It's like in fantasy football when you sell low, right? Like, this is your chance. Or buy low. Sorry, buy low. You'll be buying low on Mike Evans because recency bias is a thing. You can sit in that conference room and say, hey, this is a guy who hasn't put up 1,000 yards this year. He's really struggling, and he's got the GOAT as his quarterback. What's the excuse, right? So that's a name to keep an eye on. Are you interested in Mike Evans?
I'm interested. It would depend on the price, like all of these. I think he would cost more than Hopkins, but less than Higgins. Obviously less than Adams. It also, I want to mention something real quick. The last 2 names you mentioned, Evans and Hopkins, what's interesting about those 2 is that they come from situations that are up in the air. Tom Brady might retire again. Tom Brady might try to go to Vegas. Tom Brady might try to go to San Francisco. The Buccaneers might be hitting a reset, and they might be trying to be like, all right, well, we're going to sign Baker next year and see what happens. And, maybe we're not going to try and get rid of anyone, or we're going to try and get rid of everyone. Cardinals, they're probably going to fire Cliff Kingsbury at the end of this year.
You think so?
Probably. Yeah. Have you seen how last year ended and how this year has gone?
Yeah,
it's been brutal, even before Kyler got hurt.
You're right.
So that kind of is like, how do those teams value those guys? Do they want them to stick around long-term for these transition periods? That is kind of like, the Bengals know T. Higgins is a good player. That's really just out of a surplus of other wide receivers and the knowledge that they have to pay Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow at some point, that's why it's even available. And T. Higgins is a free agent soon, and they know they can't pay all of those guys. And then Davante Adams. There's a chance Davante Adams just stays in Vegas and Tom Brady goes to Vegas. There's a chance that happens. There's a non-zero chance that they say, all right, let's try and get a veteran stopgap. And if McDaniels has even 1% more brain power next year, we're an 11-win team.
I completely forgot about that connection too. McDaniels and Brady.
So that there's a lot of different factors. I think out of all of those guys, Mike Evans is probably going to be the most available because I think there's a real chance that Brady bolts and the Bucs are forced into this kind of weird transition period, and they might try to recoup some of the assets that they've lost over the last couple of years trying to win a Super Bowl. But the only guy that would be worth the second overall pick, I think, would be Adams, and you would still have to get a haul back. You would still, like we said, you would still have to get maybe another first rounder, definitely a second rounder, and definitely some other mid-round pick, 3 to 5, somewhere in that range. So I would say the likelihood based on team, Bears' own team need, age of player, availability, situation they're coming from, I would say this is the likelihood right now of these players happening. Higgins is the most likely to leave his current situation. Then it's probably Evans, tied with Hopkins, separated by a hair, and then Adams. I still think that the Raiders are going to try and piece this together next year, whether that be with a Jimmy G or with a Tom Brady or with, probably one of those 2 guys, but then lower down the rung, maybe a Baker, God help them, or
who knows.
No. But, with Jimmy G and Tom Brady being the top 2 guys there. And then going from there, I think unless Davante Adams says, get me the hell out of here, I think he's not super likely to move. So I'd be interested in Mike Evans. I'd be most interested in T. Higgins. Like, if you got to give up next year's first rounder and maybe something from this draft to get T. Higgins, I would probably be interested in that. It was like, you'd have to ask me how I felt at the time. Like right now, of course, it's easy to say that. And we could have these dreams of Justin Fields and T. Higgins. And that puts you in, opens the playoff window wide open next year.
Right.
When Darnell Mooney comes back, when Chase Claypool takes stuff forward, hopefully Cole Kmet takes it. You know how it goes, blah, blah, blah. But it's just, I think that is the most likely one. Obviously, we've been talking about Davante Adams for 10 minutes here. I'll admit, I don't think it's likely. I think it's kind of a pipe dream right now. But with everything, I mean, the Phillies, the Eagles probably thought the same thing about A.J. Brown. They identified a guy they wanted, though, and they said, this is something we can make happen. And they waited for their moment. The Bears might feel that way about Mike Evans or about Davante Adams and say, all right, now we just got to wait. We just got to wait till draft day. And then once more dominoes fall with free agency and other things, then we'll make it happen. That's totally possible. I don't know. And more rifts could open up. I mean, if Tom Brady leaves, Mike Evans might say, get me the hell out of here, Or like, I don't think T. Higgins is going to demand a trade. I think, like I said, the Bengals are actively looking because they know what their situation is and they're aware of it. But it's still, and now I'm just ranting about wide receivers now.
No, I get it.
But that's just like, the nice thing is, though, what we've done here, and real quick, I'll just go through like matter of desirability as a Bears fan and what you like, who I would want the most. Obviously, Davante Adams with a bullet, 100%. And then T. Higgins, Mike Evans, and then like a separation, and then Deandre Hopkins. But that's just like my own dream board. But that's different from the availability board too. So the nice thing is, though, there are options, and like there are avenues for you to get Justin Fields, that number one receiver. And let's not forget, Odell Beckham Jr. now is going to do a whole nother tour in free agency everybody now, of everybody who wants to come calling, because he's not going to play this year. So now he's just saying, you know what? I may have been a little hasty trying to just go to the Bills or the Rams or the Cowboys. And the Bears are going to be able to throw the bag at him. Now, should they, of course, be throwing that at Orlando Brown more than anybody else? And other, I forget who the other elite tackle who's going to be available in free agency is, but should they be throwing money at those guys first and foremost? Yes, of course. But in the matter that things maybe don't go your way, or you don't get one of these top tier tackles, you have options, and not just in the trade market, but in free agency as well, in a tiny, tiny, tiny free agent pool of guys that are going to be worth signing. Granted, but still, all right. I digress.
Well, here's where that worries me real quick,
because I fear I may have upset the comment section.
No, you didn't upset. They're pretty much in agreement with you. But here's what the last thing you said. Here's where I'm worried. Right? Is everyone knows, the GMs know, the league knows that this is one of the weaker free agent wide receiver pools in history since I've been alive. Right? Since I've really been following it. Sure. And the people who have the assets like Davante Adams and the Raiders and the Bengals with T. Higgins and the Buccaneers, they can leverage that in negotiations and say, hey, you have to overpay for these guys because we know this is your only option if you're looking for a wide receiver one, right? We know that you're probably not going to take Jackson Smith and Jigba at 2, obviously not. And if you don't make a draft day trade, and if, they can use that as leverage. They can use that as leverage and say, hey, you're not making Allen Lazard your wide receiver one. You're not making Jacoby Myers your wide receiver one. So we go into the negotiation room and say, the Raiders are sitting there and say, hey, you got to pay us more than what you're thinking because we know this is your only answer. You're not going into 2023 with Chase Claypool and Darnell Mooney, no effing shot. And if a lot of the times these trades happen after the draft. So if you get into a scenario where post-draft, this has been on the Bears' radar for months. They go into the draft. It doesn't shake out the way. They don't get a Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnson. They miss out on wide receiver. Then, especially at that point, these teams can say, you didn't get any of those guys? You're going to stick with Mooney and Claypool and Valus? Are you kidding me? And now you want to have Mike Evans? Well, guess what? You got to pay more than what you even thought you were because you don't have a choice. So that's where I get a little bit worried about the weakness of this free agent class. And, I pray to God that they don't sign any of the guys. I mean, maybe they'll probably sign a fringe guy for a 1-year deal, $3 million, something like that.
Dante Pettis comes back or something.
Yeah, exactly. Or no, I hope he doesn't come back. But
a guy that if you're signing him to be your 4 or 5, then that's fine. Like what he brings you on punt returns alone is like kind of worth it. Like if you give him a 1-year, $1 million contract, that's fine.
Yeah, and look, here's the other thing too about this before we segue into something else. I part of me does believe that Pace. Fuck
Pace.
me,
Oh
man.
no! Oh no,
It's been
Kevin!
12 months, and I'm still doing it. I'm sorry. Oh, polls.
That
It
was
it
really
it
funny.
it sort of worries me that he already did the trade for a wide receiver. And thus far, it hasn't worked out. But I don't even think it matters about whether it worked out or hasn't. He might be sitting there saying, "Hey, I already made my move with draft capital. I already gave up assets to get a wide receiver. Like that's what I've done. Like I'm not doing it again, right?" He might sit there and say, "I'm not doing it again," which I think is the wrong way to think, right? You have to go all out to make this team better. And Chase Claypool was a risk in comparison to Mike Evans, DeAndre Hopkins, Davante Adams, T. Higgins, guys who are solidified great wide receivers, right? Claypool, he's good. He has potential to be, 1,000-yard receiver, but he doesn't have the same track record as those guys do. So he might sit there and say, I already did this. I gave up the assets for a wide receiver. I'm not doing it again, right? Because we've already seen based off of his moves thus far, he's not going to be as willing to trade picks as Ryan Pace was. He wants to save these picks. He wants to accumulate picks and bring in younger players, make this younger team so that, which isn't the wrong way to think. But at a certain point, when the wide receiver room has been as bad as it has, like you can still have this general ideology of we are going to build through young players, and then you can throw an older guy in there. You can throw a 30-year-old in there. Like that's fine if the rest of your team is young enough. And Connor just put this in the chat, and you have Justin Fields, right? Like all of these guys are going to want to be Chicago Bears because of Fields. In the past, no one wants to play with Mitch. No one wants to play with Jay. Brandon Marshall did, but now you have a guy as young and electric as Fields who can throw the deep ball well, who can be a great asset for any person who's coming here. Big market Chicago. Like they're going to be top of the list for all of these guys for the next go. So all I'm saying here is get ready, Chicago Bears fans, because there's going to be a whole lot of tweets and a whole lot of rumors. Rumor, Bears connected to X player. Rumor, source, Bears in on Mike Evans. Like that's how it's going to be up until the draft. So, and Go Celebrix says, I think they will be fine with Claypool, Mooney, and a draft pick or a free agent like Lazard or Myers. I disagree, man. I like they might be fine, but that's not how you elevate this team to be Super Bowl caliber, which is obviously possible in 2024 and 2025. And, if you're calling me crazy, go look at the Miami Dolphins. Go look at the Philadelphia Eagles. We've done this time and time again. You can see it. You give these guys a solidified number one, even for guys who aren't as talented as Justin Fields, and all of a sudden they're looking like MVP candidates, right? Give Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, MVP candidate. That's just what you have to do. That is just what you have to do. So they got to find a way to do it.
Well, I mean, to the point about Justin Fields, we got people in the chats. I mean, one throw from last week, got people saying Velus Jones Jr. is going to be a star now. One throw.
I think they're joking. These are mob guys who are joking. Who are joking on. Well, hey, question for you, and let's segue into the Lions game, right? Bears Lions. We're 42 minutes into the episode, and we haven't talked about this game, which I think honestly, most of our listeners are probably happy about.
I think that's probably a good thing.
Is any of what happened last week, and by what happened, I mean one reception by Velus Jones Jr. or he might have had another one, but obviously we're thinking of the deep ball, beautiful dime ball. Does that sort of put any momentum towards Velus, at least just getting on the field more and seeing more opportunities?
I think it gives more. I mean, out of necessity, he's going to be on the field just because. I mean, everybody's hurt. Like that's going to be it. Like on its own, but. I think so. I mean, that was more last week was more about the throw. I feel like, I mean, Justin Fields put it where only Velus Jones Jr. was going to be able to get it, which obviously is huge. But, I think he will be on the field. He did show, I mean, that not to take all credit away from Velus Jones Jr., it did showcase his speed. It did showcase his big playmaking ability, and his, kind of ability to break a game in a way. So, I do think so. As long as he can hang on to the football, I think the opportunities will start to come more for him. And I mean, you're at the last two games of a season and a lost season. We've been saying it for weeks. At some point, you got to see what the kid has. So, yeah, I mean,
screw it. This reminds me of, Jake? You know what this reminds me of? 20, what was it? 2019, week 17. Let's give Riley Ridley a chance. And this Reese
that
Riley
I
Ridley
stand by that, because that guy couldn't even get on the field. Like, at least Velus Jones Jr. can get on the damn field. Like,
yeah,
I'll give him that. But holy
hell.
hell. I mean, that's a good point. I mean, at least that's good news. He's ahead of Riley Ridley, at least, in being active on game days.
Yeah, and here's one thing Charlie Chase says real quick, too. I just know the Bears have 2 seasons to build around JF1. They need to hit on a lot of these. Like, again, the luxury of trading for Deandre Hopkins, Mike Evans, Davante Adams is you minimize all risk. Like, all risk is out the window. Like, I don't care if you think Jack Smith and Jigba is the best wide receiver in the draft, or if you think the same about Jordan Addison and Quentin Johnson. It is a risk because they're being drafted. They have no track record. Injuries can happen, right? Every draft pick is a risk, every single one. And as you go further down the draft, the risk becomes greater. If you want to eliminate all risk, because maybe Poles is conscious enough to know, hey, I'm not good at drafting, or through one draft, I'm not good at drafting offensive skill players. I drafted Velus Jones Jr., he's been a bust, and I drafted Treston Ebner, he's been a bust. Maybe I try to say, hey, let's eliminate risk and just trade for a guy and get a guy who we know is good. And I think that's what he kind of tried to do with Chase Claypool, which is, again, I don't know if he'll try to do it again. But Bears-Lions, boy, am I happy that this game is at least in a dome, because Justin Fields sometimes looks like a different player in a dome. And he surely will look faster than he did last week, because the cold just it just stiffens your legs. You just can't run the same. And Velus isn't a bust. Somebody put it in the chat, but he's not a bust, but he hasn't lived up to, what he should have been, because at that time, that pick was very significant. You had plans that, hey, this is going to be your wide receiver too. That was the plan. So anyway, Bears-Lions, what is your initial read on this?
I think that this is going to be a shootout again. Like, I think it's going to be a stupid game again. The Lions indoors, ideal conditions, obviously. And, the Bears now, who've been struggling offensively for the last couple of weeks, now go indoors against a team that they're familiar with, and you go from there. But I think this is going to be a good game for Justin Fields. I mean, look what Carolina just did. Carolina just ran all over Detroit with Chuba Hubbard. I'll say that again. Chuba Hubbard made fools of them. Not only him, Deonta Foreman did too. And Deonta Foreman's a good player. I won't clown him that much, but they had 2 guys on the Carolina Panthers run roughshod over them. I'm going to talk like your parents. Roughshod over them. It's stupid. The Bears should be able to run up and down the field. Justin Fields should have easily over 100 yards rushing. Obviously, we would like to see him pass a little bit more. We still want to see him progress as a passer, and that's the huge thing. And I don't want to keep having these arguments of, oh, well, he's a running back. Shut up. Go touch grass. Open your eyes, you moron. But, it's just, I actually won one of those arguments yesterday with somebody where I was did you see the throw to Velus Jones Jr.? It's not every game, but at least once a game, usually there is a throw where you're that's it. That's that giddy up Kramer gif. But it's just, I would like to see, the Packers game obviously was such a step in the right direction because he did it for a full game and it was awesome. But you got to keep doing it for obvious purposes. So, I think this could be a good game offensively. Obviously now selfishly, I'm going to be honest. I'm hoping they lose. I want to be at 1 or 2 in the draft. I think we all want that. So it's just kind of it sucks to root for losses, but there's 2 games left in the season and you're fighting for the number 1 overall pick possibly. Sorry. I know people, you're rooting for losses. Cry me a damn river. Sorry. You have 3 wins. If you want a positive, this is it. This is how you get better. I said this to you bozos 5 weeks ago, and y'all wanted to cry and bitch and moan at me. Now you're here. Now you have the 1 overall pick possibly. You could possibly pick 1-1. Do you know how good that is for your team when you have the quarterback already? I just want you to process that. So, anyway, I digress. I do think they lose anyway because the Lions now in a bounce back spot at home, still fighting for a spot.
The Lions in a bounce back spot. Everybody be afraid. This is the Detroit Lions on a bounce back spot.
We clown Motor City Dan a lot And yeah, he's a meathead,
Or
kind of just
Don
kind of like
Burr.
he's not the best coach in the NFL. But if
Oh,
there's
damn.
one thing that MCDC does well, he gets the team motivated. And they're actually playing for something like this. Yeah, I love calling him Motor City Dan Campbell, baby. I love calling him that. Anyway, get me sidetracked. But if there's one thing MCDC is going to do, is be like, hey, we're still in the playoff picture. We're still, and Kevin Lapka's famous in the hunt graphic. We win this game, bounce back. Let's show them that last week is not us, and we're at home. Let's give the fans something to cheer for. That's his bread and butter, baby. Biting kneecaps, drowning in the ocean, all that fucking coffee. This is his bread and butter. This is Dan Campbell's like this is his ninth symphony, baby. This is like he probably hasn't slept in days. MCDC is going to be coming out hot.
He definitely hasn't slept in days. He definitely hasn't slept in days. But Matt Eberflus is the same. He's not the same way. The way he speaks and doesn't have the same antics and all that. But he gets his team ready to play. Like tell me that the Bears haven't played hard in the last 2 games they played against 2 really good teams, 2 of the top teams in the NFL. They didn't win those games, but they sure as hell didn't lay up and die. Like. They played those games hard. And to be frank with you, I expect them to play hard again. Now, you're lucky that Luke Getsy's on your side. Apparently, Luke Getsy's the one driving the tank.
That has never – that some of the most cowardly play calling I have ever seen in my life the last 2 weeks.
Make it less obvious.
Run, short pass, punt. It's kind of funny. It's kind of funny.
At what point I tweeted, they had like 12 men in the huddle. I'm like, you never have 12 men in the huddle. Like you're just purposely getting flags out here. You're going that far. But Shane makes a good point. Like, again, this is a Lions team that just lost to the Carolina Panthers. The Chicago Bears, with all their injuries, in my opinion, are probably still a better team than the Carolina Panthers when Justin Fields is healthy. Like just solely because of Justin Fields. And, this is a Bears team that, they had a couple more guys last time they played. Should have beat the Lions last time they played. I mean, they lost because of a missed Carl point extra point. Again,
I'm going to be actively rooting for a loss here, but I still hope it's the stupidest way possible. The last couple weeks, last week against the Bills wasn't really a stupid loss. You kind of just got outplayed. Same thing like the Eagles, they just pulled away from you. But like before that, you were losing games in just the stupidest way possible. Give me more of that. Give me more dumb ways to lose. Show me new ones, actually.
Yeah, you love those. That's your
It's great. So it's ideal situation. You don't lose because of Justin Fields or the offense fucking up. You lose because of stupid shit like the kicker missing a PAT or some guy, in the first catch of his life, Simba Webster, just dropping the ball. Or a tip pass by Dave Montgomery going for an interception at the end of the game. Yes, these are stupid ways to lose, and I will continue to root for it. I hope that there's a game-winning field goal and Cairo Santos kicking it, and it doinks off a defensive lineman's head, and they catch it and run it back. I want a circus. I want the dumbest possible ways to lose. I want Justin Fields to throw a perfect Hail Mary, and I want it to get wedged in Dante Pettis' face mask, and somebody just takes it out of his face mask from the Lions and intercepts it and takes it down the game. Like, I want the dumbest ways to lose. Show me something new. Show me something I've never seen before in my life that just makes me laugh. That's it.
Wow. I was literally going to ask you, what are the craziest possible things you can imagine for them to blow it? And that you came up with some creative ones. The football getting stuck in the face mask that's an interesting one. And look, and if I'm being honest, I think it's going to have to come down to that. Like, I don't think the Lions are going to bolt race you with this game.
No, you should be able to keep it close.
You're going to keep it close. And, the ball bounces weird ways. Justin Fields is a magician. There's a total chance that they win this game. Like, there is a total chance that happens. I'm not going to make my prediction yet of whether I think they do win the game. But, again, is Luke Getsy driving the tank? 100%. Are these players on top of the tank dancing? No, they are not. Like, these guys are going to bust their ass. And you've seen that the past 2 weeks. They have gone out there and tried to beat both of those teams. Now, I'll be honest, like, a win against both those teams is, a little bit more significant. You'd be a little bit more content about it. Although it did affect the draft position, you'd be like, hey, we just beat one of the top 2 teams in football. Like, that's a good thing to take away as far as, what you can look at 2023. And it's something that you could definitely look back at. But when it's beating the Detroit Lions, okay, now you lost draft position and you beat the Detroit Lions, team that you can beat with whoever's playing quarterback, Chase Daniel, Mitch Trubisky, it doesn't matter, right?
They could put you back there.
At that point, you're probably right. So I'm with you, but I would just caution Bears fans that there's a chance that they win this game and everyone's pissed. And I don't I'm not, early on in the season, right? I was like, they need to win because I don't think that they'll buy into hits if they don't. That's far beyond that now. Like, I think they're bought in regardless.
If only there was somebody. If only, God help you, if only there was somebody, anybody that could have told you that that's what was going to happen, Kevin. If only there was someone tall, dark, bearded, and handsome that could have told you that that was going to be the case. If only there was someone extremely smart and cool with tattoos that could have said, hey, Kevin, that's dumb. Hey, Kevin, that's pigeon shit, man. If only there was someone. If only there was someone to tell you that the players would be fine.
You want to do this? All right, let's do this. If only there was someone who told you Justin Fields was a star quarterback.
I walked that back quarterback in the first round. Early. I walked that back. Yeah, but
you said it.
You
said it, and you can't take it back. It came out of your mouth.
I was right for the first 5 weeks of the season.
Oh, please. That doesn't count. You were not right.
Until the Commanders game, I was right.
You can't just use hindsight to your advantage.
And because I'm a grown-up who is an adult, I will admit that. I was wrong about that.
Unbelievable. Yeah, okay. And maybe I was wrong too, but yours was more egregious than mine. Okay?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
No, man. Okay. We'll do this again real quick. There were legitimate question marks about Justin Fields.
No, there were not. No, there were not.
Kevin, after the Commanders game,
nope.
There were concerns. There were concerns. Now, do we all look foolish for that? Yes, of course, and we have been happily proved wrong. But
you did admit it.
There were after that Commanders game, it was getting dicey. But
fine. At least you admitted you were wrong, and now you're all in. That's all I care.
Yeah,
about.
How could you not?
Where were we even going with this conversation? Again, I think Matt Eberflus. I think this is where we're at. Matt Eberflus was talking about, hey, wins still matter. And
I don't remember how we got here.
It was Matt Eberflus on the pod, or not on the podcast, on the press conference was like, hey, we're gonna fight these wins. Matt, it doesn't matter. It at this point, it pretty much doesn't matter. I'm not, I think we know what this team is capable of and is going to be capable of in 2023, regardless of how these last two games play out. I'm not going to learn anything more. I think I know what I know. I think everyone knows what they know. I think the coaches know what they know as far as what's going to be carried in 2023. We know Justin Fields can be a winner regardless of whether he wins, all these different things. So, that's not significant to me. Let's do some bold predictions and game predictions before we get the heck out of here. Connor O'Donnell in the chat. They moved the ball plenty in the Commanders game. Just kept missing in the red zone with incredible play calls. See, Jake, we knew it was never his fault. We're not doing this again, but I will never let you live that down. Kellen and I will never let you live that down because we were right and I was right. And I'm going to go back and listen to the episode we did the day Justin Fields was drafted. And I'm going to pull out all the effing receipts, okay? Because I called it from the start. And yes, I went to Ohio State and I had a little bit the luxury of knowing what kind of player he was. And, maybe a little bias. But a little bit of bias. That's beyond the point. Bold predictions. Give me something spicy.
All right. This is going to be my prediction. I think Justin Fields is going to have a good game. I think it's over 200 passing yards through the air, obviously, because I said passing yards. I think he does have one of his signature runs, and I think that he's going to have one of those, breakaway 50-plus yard runs after having a really bad game on the ground last week against the Bills. And I think the Bears are going to have some offense here, despite the injuries, despite guys being out. I think Cole Kmet gets fed early and often because that's his guy. Obviously, he's one of the only ones remaining. I think Justin Fields has a very productive game against the Lions. I think he gets up for this game indoors, ideal conditions, and I think it's going to be a good bounce back for Justin Fields. I will say, though, I'm just going to kind of go back. I think they find a stupid way to lose the game. I think Justin Fields does his best. I think Luke Getsy does the best to play call for a loss, but I think, is it only 120 that he needs to break the record? Is that true? Is that
No,
what it's at? There's no way.
no,
It
no, no,
has
no,
to
no,
be
no, no.
more.
I think Charlotte J is just predicting how many yards he's going to rush
Oh,
for.
well, we're Deandre. Yeah, because he's still like 200 away or something because he only had like 11 last week.
Yeah.
So don't think he's going to break the record this week. I think he does make a solid effort though. I think next week we're going to be watching against the Vikings and be like, all right, he has a chance. And like we're all going to be tuned in. Like, can he break the record? But I think he makes a solid effort and solid push towards that this week. I think it's 200 through the air, at least 100 on the ground. I think he has a long one for a touchdown, some classic Justin Fields magic. But I think they find a stupid way to lose the game, whether that's a ball, deflected off the helmet in the end zone, whether that's Cairo Santos just drilling it into the ground, something Cairo Santos falls down Charlie Brown style when he's kicking the ball, something stupid. I think the Bears lose a very close game, but I think Justin Fields has us talking all really positively on Monday. Is that bold?
Yeah.
I don't feel like it's not that bold anymore.
That's not bold, but that's fine. We'll give it to you.
I'll say, you know what I'll say? Cole Kmet over 100
seen
yards receiving.
He had 74 last game. It would be the first time having 100 in his career, so that would be very bold. But yes, 74 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns the last game against the Lions when he went absolutely ballistic. They had the 50-yard touchdown, and he had that other short touchdown from Fields. And considering the lack of weapons this time around, right, without Mooney, without Claypool. Well, Claypool might play. It was limited today.
Dylan Gabriel cash. Let's go.
Woo! Who scored?
No, Dylan Gabriel, that passing total.
Attaboy. Big money, Jake Hassan. There you go. Good job. But yeah, I like the Cole Kmet prop. Here's something that's interesting to me. We haven't even brought up at all. I wouldn't be surprised if the Bears take an approach where Khalil Herbert is like the solidified number 1 in this game. And he's like,
I would not be surprised at all.
He's like 70-30 because, hey, if they really are not going to re-sign Dave Montgomery and they don't want to pay money to any of the stacked free agent running back class, then this is your time to kind of experiment. Well, can Khalil Herbert be your number 1, right? That's been the question. Can he be the number 1? This is your time to find out. These last 2 games against 2 bad defenses as well, he has a chance to shine. They might just say, hey, thanks for your time, Dave Montgomery. We're going to give Herbert a legitimate shot as the number 1 in this game and see what he can do. I don't know if that'll happen, but it'd be interesting. I think Khalil Herbert scores a touchdown and runs for 70+ yards as he returns from IR. He's nice and healthy. You're back in the dome, one of the worst rush defenses in the NFL. I think they do just that. I'll go Khalil Herbert, 70+ yards and a touchdown. Big day for him, and I think he breaks off a big run. It's so hard for me to just predict Justin Fields to get another big run, right? Just because it's happened so many times. But again, I wouldn't be surprised if it happens. Defensively, no Jalen Johnson. I expect Kyler Gordon, Jaquan Brisker to keep making plays, but I'm out of ideas defensively, man. And I will say last week, the linebackers played really well against the Buffalo Bills. Matt Adams was flying across the field. It was Nicholas Morrow made a couple of nice plays. It was not.
Well, I mean, you're burying the lead here. I mean, like Kyler Gordon continued when he's not been injured the last 4 or 5 weeks has been playing awesome. He's been playing really, really well.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is, look, people made a big deal out of it when at the beginning of the year, always a bust and all that. This is typically the route that cornerbacks take coming out of the draft. It's a weird position. They struggle. They learn the speed of the game. The speed is totally different, especially when you're a man, slot corner going one-on-one against some of the best players in the league. It's going to be hard to figure out, what your role is and figure out the speed of NFL offenses and NFL receivers and the route running techniques that are just so precise. So yeah, obviously it makes sense that now he's kind of coming into his own. And hey, you know what it is? It's a testament to Matt Eberflus and the defensive coaching staff, because it hasn't just been Kyler Gordon. You've seen guys like Josh Blackwell come in there and be just fine. Have they been great? No, but have they been just fine? Yeah. That's a testament to this coaching staff getting the whole roster ready to play, because we've seen guys come in before and just get absolutely burnt. They're burnt toast. We haven't seen that from a lot of the third stringers that have come in, whether it is Josh Blackwell or, Deandre Houston Carson, who's been around for a while, and guys like that. But that's where I'm at. A T3B podcast, Monty's the hits principal. Yeah, he is. But it's just, I love Monty. I do. I don't think they're going to be willing to pay him, what was it, $5-6 million a year. I don't know what he's going to be asking for in this market, but I don't think they,
especially when Khalil Herbert has played well when he's been on the field. Now, do you have concerns about his availability? Possibly, but I mean, you have those same concerns with Montgomery. Like he's had the same issues, staying on the field. But yeah, I mean, it's like you said, it hasn't been burnt toast like we thought. It's been a little bit better. So, hey, I mean, maybe you're finding guys that you can carry over into next year when you then pay a bunch of guys to take their spots.
Exactly. All right, game predictions.
Final score predictions. Oh, I'm pitting out. That's not good. Anyway.
You want to go?
All right. Lions are favored by 6. It's in Detroit. I do think the Bears cover this. It was. I haven't looked at it recently, but I think the Bears keep it close. I'm going to selfishly and try to manifest a Bears loss. I'm going to say that the Bears lose this game 34-31.
Okay. I'll tell you how the Bears foolishly lose this one. So I think they lose. I think I think they lose 27-26. And what happens is it's 27-20. The Bears score a touchdown on the final drive. They end up going for 2 to try to win the game because why not? And they don't get the 2-point conversion. They lose 27-26. They lose by 1 because they missed 2-point conversion at the end of the game, which would be up there. I think that'll be up there in ways to foolishly lose. You get in there. Luke Getsy's like, guys, just run into the defense. Like, just don't get open. Don't get open. All right, just do something stupid. Right, like Luke Getsy, there he is driving the tank on the final play. I will do
Akari Blossome run up the middle that goes nowhere.
Yeah, exactly right. A fullback dive. So that's what I'm going with. 27-26 Lions. Bears lose on a missed 2-point conversion at the end of the game, trying to go and win it. So that's where I'm at. But hopefully it'll be at least an entertaining game. Right, back in the turf, back in the dome. Justin seems to sometimes look like a better player in those environments. So should be entertaining, at least for Bears fans who are dreading watching the Bears on New Year's Day.
That is true, unfortunately. But regardless, that does it for us. Cashed out, love that. Or paid out, whatever. That does it for this edition of Bears Nation podcast. Shout out to the comments today. You guys were on fire. I know a lot of you
shout out the mob.
I know a lot of you came over from the mob. A lot of you came over from 670. We appreciate that. You guys are the best. I also kind of work I do BetQL stuff. But
yeah, you work in the same building. Same
adjacent.
Floor.
I work 670 adjacent. But for myself, for Kevin, appreciate you guys. Appreciate all the guys in the comments that came through. Hope you come back next time as well. Hope you listen. Hope you enjoyed everything. We appreciate you guys. We enjoy having you guys around. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and we will see you next time. Catch Kevin doing graphic stuff, doing awesome visual stuff for the mob, for 670, for everyone there. Catch me if you want. You don't have to. I don't really care. Doing BetQL Daily with Joe Ostrowski, doing You Better You Bet with Nick Costos and Ken Barkley. But elsewhere, you can find myself on Twitter at Jake_Haas2. I know a couple of you followed me already. I will follow you back. Find Kevin at KevCharles112. For myself, for Kevin, this has been Bears Nation Podcast. We will see you on Monday for the recap episode of Bears and Lions. Until then, everyone, bear down.